Now, if you guys were like me when you finished Sahil F's story, you might be very confused as to what happened and what everything actually meant. But don't worry, because I'm going to explain the main components of the story, but in an interesting way, without a script. So if you guys were to see a layman try to explain such a complicated story with only notes and not actual script, keep watching. Obviously, please, if you can, I would appreciate it. Leave a like, subscribe, and yeah, let's just get into the video. Let's do it. I mean, so the story basically starts when Hinako finds out that she's getting basically sold off to get married to pay off her father's debts, right? That's what brings all of the silent illness into everything. That's what starts the psychological shit that goes on. All the monsters, all her friends, all that represents the sort of trauma that she feels from not being able to make her own decisions and to not be able to get the future that she wants based on the choices that she makes. And she also sees marriage and stuff as like reducing her autonomy and stuff. It's so interesting. There's a lot more to that as well. Like with the whole two Hinako's thing with the Hinako, the rebellious one, I guess, the one that's not in the Dark Shrine, and then the one in the Dark Shrine. They're sort of two separate Hinakos, and they are obviously very different as well. Eventually, the Hinako in the Dark Shrine actually becomes sort of subservient to Yuki, the fox mask guy, and her whole thing is wanting to make her decisions for herself, wanting to make her choices, her own choices, but she kind of easily gives that away, at least after a while, because she gets influenced by Kotoyuki, the fox mask guy, and she just wants to give all her autonomy to him because she feels that it helps her escape from the very, very bad life that she lived with, all the child abuse and all the bullying and stuff. If she can escape all of that, that Hinako sees it as a good thing, which I thought was very interesting because obviously it contrasts quite heavily with the other Hinako because she's all about trying to take life into her own hands and make her own decisions. She keeps saying that in the game, some of the notes and some of the like dialogue that she wants to make her own decisions. And it's very, very interesting to see that contrast between them. There's also obviously her friends as well, like Shu, Rinko, and Sasuko. And you know, they're all related to Hinako and bring out certain aspects of how she sees things and her own like psychological trauma in different ways. It's so cool. Obviously, you have like Rinko, which is I feel like Rinko is the most like blatant, but she's sort of jealous of Shu's love towards her Hinako, and that jealousy forms in the fire that you see when you fight her, and it's like all the things she says to you as well, just all like deflecting just her own like unaccountability. I don't know if that's the word, but the lack of accountability, she just deflects down to you, and she can't just accept the fact that she just doesn't like her, and it obviously makes Hinako really messed up mentally because Rinko just always like bullies her and stuff like that. At least you know indirectly and stuff, or even directly when she lets her fall down the stairs, right? So it's just like Rinko is just that one. I think is the most blatant. There's also Sakuko, who's I find her annoying as well. I mean, they're all annoying and kind of fake, but Sakuko always talks about how she feels betrayed. You know, she that you basically left her alone and you didn't like back her up. She talks about in some of the notes with the Hinako running and how she was so much better, something like that. And then how Sakuko, she says in the notes that she wishes that Hinako fell, like broke her nose or something. Like it's actually crazy how vile and how much of a fake friend she is. But I think also I've heard a theory about how she feels like she's being sort of left behind, and the reason that she says the Uragirimono all the time as well is because she wants things to be how they were and always how they were, but because of the whole marriage thing that's going on here, like Hinako seemingly getting married off, that can't be the same anymore. So that's also probably why Hinako imagines Sakuko in this way, and imagining her always calling her like Uragirimono. Maybe Hinako feels like, based on their experiences before, that Sakuko might feel that way about how Hinako is getting married now. And also the fact that when you do one of the puzzles and then you leave her like in the dark, I mean, this is just a theory, out of theory. Probably someone said that already, maybe, but from what I was thinking after I did that bit, it's like you also leave her in the dark after you finish that puzzle. You just completely leave her to herself and making her have to accept that, you know, things can't stay the same and she's got to figure out her own way. So I guess she might be lost and just lost in the dark for maybe a while. but she should try to find her own way out of it, because things can't stay the same forever, right? So obviously there's the supernatural elements which you can see throughout the whole game. It's like literally in the face, right, and you're experiencing it. But I think what it's also centered around is the War of the Gods. So there's obviously Kotoyuki, who's being manipulated by the love spell by the Fox Clan god. And because he's the heir to the clan, he needs to find someone to carry on that lineage with. And he thinks that Hinako is the most sort of appropriate for that. There's that, but also she has the divine blood, so that makes the most appropriate person to be married to the heir of the Fox Clan, so that the lineage can continue and that power can carry through as well. There's Shu, who's her friend since childhood, her Aibo, her partner. He comes from a long lineage of physicians, and he gives her the drugs that she uses throughout the game, the red capsules, in order to, well, what he reveals initially you think is just to help her on, give you health and stuff throughout the game, and to relieve the headaches that she gets. But you find out that he pretty much used it as a way to make her rely on him, and to make her not be with Kotoyuki anymore, or not become potentially with Kotoyuki anymore, and to be with him instead. Because he's a smart guy, right? He knows how to make these drugs that can help out quite a bit, because she mentions that none of the drugs really work for her other drugs, and these are the ones that work. So he knew that, and he took advantage of that in order to make her rely on him, which I think is it's not great. Like, he's not a bad person, but I feel like with a lot of these characters, these characters show how love can take you the wrong way, which I think is pretty interesting. When you obsess over someone so much, you do stuff that's not very good in order to make them be with you, which I thought is pretty cool, because it shows how all of these characters are flawed. Every character I've mentioned has flaws, right? Even Hinako herself, they all have flaws in them, and I think that's pretty good writing, because none of the characters, even the main character is like a objectively good person. So I thought that was pretty cool to see. Oh shit. So I believe the overall theme is that Hinako wants to make her own choices and experience the consequences of those decisions, because of, one, the society that she lives in, obviously 1960s Japan, with all the gender roles and things, how women basically have to serve the man or their husband in every single way and accept anything bad that comes from them, like abuse or whatever, as you see in the game, right? It's interesting that there's that societal, realistic problems that Japan probably had at the time, but also the supernatural element, which obviously, as I told you, the War of the Gods thing. I think those two elements bind together, bring the overall theme together, which is obviously sort of marriage, and how Hinako believes that it takes away the sort of right to be yourself and make your own decisions. You have to basically serve your husband the whole time. That also reflected through Junko as well, which I think is a very, very interesting character. I didn't mention her too much because I don't have much to say about her, but I think I saw some theories as well, which I do also agree with, that Junko is basically the way she looks, and the reason she looks like the way she does is because Hinako basically sees her as dead and lost a sense of autonomy and a sense of self. But one of the notes makes me how when she was pregnant, she looked like super dead and super tired and malnourished, and then that makes Hinako scared as well. Like, why would she want to subject herself to this stuff, doing what the Japanese society at the time said that women should do, which is, give birth to kids and just always follow what the man says and not do anything about that, which I thought was very, very interesting. It's very, very cool to see. But yeah, I think those two, the supernatural and the realistic things together, bring the overall story together, with the friends of Hinako's sort of bringing out the other psychological traumas that she went through, which also made her a lot more like quiet and feel like she can't make her own decisions or be herself. Because you have people like Sakuko just calling her Uragiri Mono every second, and Rinko just always directly or indirectly hating on Hinako for making Shu like her. Not even making Shu like her, but just hating her because Shu likes her, which doesn't make any sense. I hate that so much, because that jealousy theme, I hate a lot, because I know it just really aggravated me. But I thought it was pretty interesting. But yeah, I think the overall story is just that. I think I'm not using a script that much all this time. So that's why I'm using a lot of ums and ers and likes. I wanted to just talk from what I remember from my heart as well. I wanted to just talk through that instead of just reading off a script like some of my past videos, because it comes across as a bit unnatural. So I kind of wanted to mention that. So I don't know if my interpretation of the story made sense. I think it was okay. Explained what I thought of the story, but yeah, I think that's kind of it. So one other theory that I wanted to add into this is that I think potentially, I'm not 100% certain on this, but what I potentially think could have been the case is that both Kotoyuki, like the whole war of the gods with Kotoyuki and Shu, could have been just made up completely in Hinako's mind as a way to justify her situation and to give a bigger purpose to the situation. Because it all that stuff links quite heavily to the law of Ebisugaoka, but we don't even really know what the town is, and potentially that's not a real place either, as I think one of the videos I watched pointed out. So I thought that theory could be interesting, that she's giving this whole supernatural and like God element to what's going on in her life to sort of make it easier to live with it, and to feel less depressed and be able to go along with what society wants her to do. So I thought that would be maybe an interesting theory to consider as well. Now, I have been mainly talking about the story because the story is the main part, I'd say, but I do want to also just touch on the gameplay because obviously it's a video game. But I do think overall the combat is, I personally enjoyed it, but I do think it is kind of mid. Some of the reasons are that with the weapons specifically, there's not much individual variety between them. Obviously, the way they animate, the way they interact with the 3D space around you, that's different. But at the end of the day, it's just like you hit R1 a few times and that's it. You have obviously R2 as well. You have the R2 counter attacks and you have the R1 focus attacks after you fill up the focus meter. Those things are different, but I kind of wish there was a little bit more complexity. Obviously, this game is not DMC or anything. It's not Devil May Cry, so I'm not expecting some super complex combos in it, different weapons all interweaving together seamlessly or anything. But I do kind of wish, for example, if you did two R1 hits, then you did R2, that it would be different. Because all you can really do is a few R1 hits, then R2 hits on its own, and you have the focus R1 attacks as well. So I think that was okay. It would have been nice to be able to switch between light and heavy sort of seamlessly. I think that would have been pretty cool. But overall, I think the melee combat, while it's not particularly complex, which is, I think is a bit disappointing because it's melee focused, the sort of gameplay itself I think is quite good in the sense of that the basic fundamental I think is pretty fun with the dodging, the physical hits feeling and looking satisfying. You also have the counters, which basically you can do when the enemy has a little visual indicator, then you can press R2 and it does like a very cool counter. The focus makes it a lot easier to see that too, which obviously incentivizes you to use the focus a lot more, which I think is pretty good, because the focus is quite an important component, which I personally didn't use in the game too much because I wanted to get as good as possible just being able to counter without it. But I thought that overall the focus was pretty good to help out as well. The sanity meter and all that stuff is pretty cool too, because it acts as a little extra shield to your health, which was quite nice. And it also links to the whole theme and the psychological trauma with Silent Hill F and Hinako's whole arc, which was pretty cool. I do also think, like I said, I do enjoy it overall, but I do think the stamina is definitely annoying, I can't lie, because it drains so quickly and it constantly means you have to just stop and wait and not do anything to let it regen. Now, I do think in that defense of that, even though I think that slows down the pace of the gameplay, because all you're doing is weighing, and sometimes the enemies don't do anything, or the things that they do can't be countered, so you just kind of wait and then you have to dodge just randomly, because I don't think it's too well telegraphed, so you can't tell us clearly what they're going to do outside of the visual indicator, which you can't see. But I do think in its defense, it does add to the sort of psychological horror tension, the survival horror tension, right? Because you're just waiting there, and you're constantly waiting for the attack that the enemy is going to do, and whether or not they're going to do the one that you can counter or not counter. And that tension of you just waiting, I do think adds a lot to the sort of feeling of dread in the game. I think that's pretty cool. I can't deny that the amount of times that you lose stamina and you're just weighing it, specifically in the boss fights, because you do not have, unless you have Higashi, which gives you infinite stamina for a period of time, and you can just use as much stamina move as you want. Outside of that, I think the amount of time that you lose stamina in boss fights and when there's a lot of enemies is so annoying. There's literally can't do nothing, and even when you upgrade to full, if you're playing on like Lost in the Fog difficulty, which is what I did in my true ending route, I played for the action and puzzle on Lost in the Fog difficulty, and when you do that, it's so difficult to maintain stamina unless you have Higashi. So yeah, that's my sort of opinion and interpretation of the story, and I wouldn't have been able to get my thoughts together without all the YouTube comments and all the YouTubers that talked about the story. I appreciate all of those people, because I had my theories and interpretations, but I couldn't really put it together. And obviously, to verify stuff, I wouldn't have been able to do that without those people. So I appreciate them for that. And the last thing I do want to just quickly add is I would recommend playing at least the puzzle difficulty on Lost in the Fog, because the puzzles, like, they obviously get harder, but they are very fun still. And you feel so smart when you figure out on that difficulty, because some of them can be pretty abstract. So I would recommend you guys try that at least, because it's really fun. I felt so smart after I figured those out. But yeah, that's kind of it really. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Thank you so much. Any constructive feedback in the comments would be appreciated to make these videos better. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Take care and peace. I'll see you guys in the next video, whatever it may be. Bye bye.